The night was dark, and the air was thick with tension. Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, stood backstage at Madison Square Garden, his heart pounding in his chest. He had been through a week of intense dieting, exercising, and taking a handful of diet pills every day to get into shape for this moment. He looked pretty good at least. But his eyes were heavy, and there were bags under them, a telltale sign of the stress and exhaustion he was under. Elvis took a deep breath and stepped out onto the stage, where a sea of faces greeted him with a deafening roar. The lights were blinding, and the energy of the crowd was almost tangible. He was wearing a white suit covered in lights, a golden cape over his shoulders, and a shirt that showed off his chest. It was a look that was both gaudy and magnificent, and it was exactly what the crowd wanted to see. But before the show could begin, there was a press conference. Elvis had perfected the art of the nothing rock and roll press conference, where he said nothing, did nothing, and still managed to grab headlines. The questions came one after another, and Elvis answered them with his trademark charm and wit. "Elvis, why have you waited so long to come to New York?" "Well, sir, we had trouble finding a good building, and once we found one, we had to wait our turn." "Mr. Presley, why have you outlasted all your competition?" "I take a lot of vitamin E, actually, honey. I suppose I've just been very fortunate." Despite his light mood, Elvis was nervous. He knew that the audience was there for him, but he also knew that anything could go wrong, and it did. The first act, a comedian named Jackie Kahane, bombed spectacularly. The crowd was restless, and the catcalls and boos grew louder. Kahane tried to win them over, but it was too late. "You are 20,000, I am 1. That's pretty rough odds," he said, before giving up and leaving the stage. Elvis, who was backstage, was furious. "Fuck him," he barked. "Just plain fuck him. If they can't be polite, I'm not gonna sing for him." His bodyguards were running around, trying to find Colonel Parker, who finally appeared and calmed Elvis down. At 9:15 p.m., Elvis finally took the stage. The crowd erupted, and the energy was electric. He performed with supreme confidence, moving and singing as if he were a finely tuned machine. The critics were impressed. The New York Times called it a spectacular triumph of insight into the mind of our mindless era, while Billboard said, "Elvis has nothing really to do with time. To our everlasting love and envy, he has transcended the exasperating constrictions of time and place." But behind the scenes, the pressure was mounting. RCA, Elvis's record label, was preparing to release an album of the Garden shows without even telling him. Joan Deary, who had been with RCA since 1954, was part of the team working on the project. "We recorded 2 of the shows," she said. "The first was a dry run. The second was what we put out. We kept the excitement high by not putting any silent space between the songs. We knew it would make the disc jockeys mad, but we didn't have a choice." The album hit the stores in just 3 days, and it sold over 1 million copies. Elvis's 4 New York shows grossed $730,000, and he took home about a third of that. It was a huge success, but it was just the beginning of a grueling tour. Elvis's life was a whirlwind of performances, parties, and late-night escapades. He loved watching movies, sometimes stopping and replaying the same scene over and over. He was a man who lived life to the fullest, but there was a darkness beneath the surface. He carried a Derringer in his boot, and he wasn't afraid to use it. He had a fascination with guns, a hobby that stemmed from both personal paranoia and a simple love of the sport. Elvis was a complex man, a king in the eyes of his fans, but a man who struggled with his own demons. As he moved from city to city, performing for adoring crowds, he was both larger than life and deeply human. The pressure was always there, but so was the love. And as the tour continued, Elvis would face more challenges, more triumphs, and more moments that would define his legacy. At the time, John Wasserman, a columnist for the San Francisco Chronicle, pointed his finger at Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker. On the back cover of Elvis's album Elvis Now, the words "Elvis Now" were almost like the Colonel's trademark. Wasserman reminded readers of the Colonel's past as a carnival barker, suggesting that he still had that old vaudeville mindset. He believed the Colonel was trying to sell Elvis like a sideshow act, but Elvis wasn't a bearded lady. Despite the low points, Elvis's early 1970s album production had its highs. Burning Love was a standout, with its Vegas-style energy and commercial success. The gospel album He Touched Me won a Grammy, Elvis's first and only, and the live recording from Madison Square Garden was a hit. Bob Palmer, writing in Rolling Stone, praised the album, calling it a mix of bombast, favorite songs, and old-fashioned rock and roll. He noted that Elvis had managed to stay true to his roots while becoming a superstar, and that his performances still resonated with a wide audience, from rock fans to those who just wanted to remember the good old days. Elvis's life during this period was like a modern-day fairy tale. He was a recluse much like Howard Hughes, but with a twist. He would perform in Las Vegas and on tour, giving his fans just enough to keep them hungry for more. In August 1972, Elvis returned to Las Vegas for another run. Each night, he met with the Colonel to get updates on the day's news. One night, he learned that his Madison Square Garden album had sold over $1 million worth of copies. Another night, the news was not so good. His attorney had filed for divorce from Priscilla. Elvis nodded, seemingly unfazed. But the most exciting news came just before the end of the engagement. Elvis was told about a planned concert in Honolulu that would be broadcast around the world via satellite. The show was set for January, and it would reach an estimated 1.5 billion people. RCA was also planning to release a 2-record album right after the concert. Elvis smiled when he heard about it, sensing the challenge and the opportunity. The Colonel and his team had been working hard to make the Honolulu concert happen. They secured the venue, negotiated with NBC, and planned the album release. Meanwhile, Elvis's health was deteriorating. His bodyguards later wrote a book detailing his struggles with food and mood swings. When Elvis was upset, he would turn to comfort foods, which only made him feel worse. Despite this, the Presley machine kept moving forward. The Colonel received regular updates from Joe Esposito in Memphis, and RCA was preparing for the album release. Marty Pizzetta, a seasoned television producer, was brought in to direct the show. He had a reputation for handling complex projects and had worked in Hawaii before. Pizzetta was surprised by Elvis's performance in Long Beach, which he found lacking in energy. He wanted to make the Honolulu show more exciting, with a ramp, a lower stage, and more interaction with the audience. The Colonel initially rejected his ideas, but Pizzetta was persistent. When he met Elvis in Las Vegas, he was honest about what he saw and what he wanted to achieve. Elvis was impressed by Pizzetta's forwardness and agreed to work with him. Elvis took the challenge of the satellite show seriously. He returned to Memphis and started a rigorous diet and exercise routine. He increased his karate workouts with his instructor, Kang Ree, who emphasized self-discipline and respect. Elvis was determined to be in top form for the concert, and his efforts paid off. He was ready to face the world and show everyone what he was made of. With Ree around, Elvis started reading more. He dove into his well-thumbed Bible and other books like Cheros's Book of Numbers, Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and Linda Goodman's Sun Sign. He also read a lot of material from the Self-Realization Fellowship. One time, journalist Frank Lieberman was at Elvis's hotel, suite with his fiancée Karen. The room was packed with people, and Elvis's friends were there with girls they had picked up. Frank noticed that the girls weren't really there for the guys. They were using them to get to Elvis. It was an awkward scene. Later, Elvis disappeared into the bedroom with some of the girls. Karen and Frank were talking to Elvis's date, who told them, Elvis is only reading the Bible to them. They peeked through the door and saw that it was true. Frank saw this happen many times. Elvis was trying to focus on his spiritual side, and he also wanted to get in shape. He took diet pills and drank a lot of protein drinks to help with his intense karate and racquetball workouts. He only drank mineral water and took vitamin pills by the handful. His friend Sonny said that Elvis was having trouble with his stomach and was overweight. But when it came time to do a TV special, Elvis dropped down to 165 pounds and looked amazing. For the special, Elvis wanted a new costume. He asked Bill Ballou to design an all-white outfit with a big eagle on the front and back of the jumpsuit and cape. In Los Angeles, RCA was translating We Love Elvis into different languages for countries where the concert would be shown. They even hired the Berlitz firm to do it. Marty Pizzetta was designing a huge stage set that would cover 3,500 seats in the Honolulu Auditorium. Back in Memphis, it was the first Christmas without Priscilla, but Elvis was feeling good. His daughter Lisa was visiting, and he had a new girlfriend, Linda Thompson. Linda and Elvis met through their friend Bill Browder. She was a former Miss Tennessee and had a strong religious streak, just like Elvis. They were inseparable, and Linda did everything to make Elvis laugh. One Christmas, Elvis asked Linda to put on her Miss Tennessee crown and banner to show off to his friends. Linda wore a mink coat and a big diamond ring Elvis had given her. She blacked out her front teeth with mascara for a funny effect. When she walked down the stairs and smiled, Elvis laughed so hard that the whole room shook. In January 1973, Elvis was preparing for the big concert in Hawaii. He had final fittings for his costume and tons of equipment were shipped from Los Angeles. Pizzetta and his crew went ahead to film scenes of Hawaii for the show. Elvis celebrated his 38th birthday with Linda, and then flew to Hawaii. There were some problems, like when Elvis gave his costume belt to Jack Lord from Hawaii Five-0. Bill Ballou had to make a new one in a hurry. Another issue was the stage setup, which Elvis didn't like. Pizzetta fixed it, and the rehearsals went smoothly. The media in Honolulu was excited, and the mayor declared an Elvis Presley Day. Elvis rehearsed in a secret location and wore outrageous outfits, telling everyone he was in disguise. When he wanted to shop, the store opened at 2 a.m. for him. Pizzetta filmed Elvis's arrival at the hotel, and thousands of fans showed up. Linda was always by his side. On the day of the show, there were technical issues. They ran out of power and had to borrow lead sheets from the Navy to fix a hum from the lighting system. They also needed more material for the show, so Elvis added 3 more songs. When he walked on stage, he was in total control. He sang 23 songs, including old favorites and new hits. The audience loved him, and he threw his cape into the crowd. After the show, Elvis was happy and proud. The satellite show was broadcast to millions of viewers, breaking records in Japan and raising money for charity. Elvis's success continued. The documentary, Elvis on Tour, won a Golden Globe Award, and he received 2 more gold records in Las Vegas. The Aloha from Hawaii show was broadcast on NBC and was a huge hit. But despite all this, Elvis started to put weight back on and was dealing with health issues. He canceled some shows, and the Colonel had to apologize to the hotel. The high times were coming to an end. The night was tense at the Las Vegas hotel, where Elvis was performing. Gene Dissel, the head of security, recounted a wild incident that took place on stage. A persistent fan tried to shake Elvis's hand all night, but Elvis kept avoiding him. Later, Elvis got a drink of water, and a girl ran up to him. Before she could reach him, a bodyguard ran out. Elvis gave her a quick kiss and sent her back to the audience. The persistent fan, seeing this, jumped up on stage and ran toward Elvis. Red West, one of Elvis's bodyguards, quickly grabbed the guy and took him off stage. Another friend of the fan got up on stage to see what happened to his buddy. Elvis thought they were coming after him, and J.D. Sumner, his bass player, stepped in to defend him. Elvis, in a burst of panic, pushed the guy back onto his table. The fans started cursing at Elvis, who cursed back. The band kept playing, and the bodyguards held Elvis back. The insults went on for a minute or two, but it felt like an hour. Elvis was so worked up that he didn't even realize he had hit the guy. Things got even more complicated when Priscilla told Elvis that her boyfriend, Mike Stone, thought it would be a good idea if Elvis didn't see their daughter, Lisa Marie, for a while. Elvis exploded, screaming and becoming violent. He even threatened to have Mike Stone killed. Ed Parker, Elvis's karate instructor and bodyguard, remembered how Elvis repeatedly said, "Mike Stone must die, he must die." One night, Elvis pulled out an M16 Army rifle and handed it to Sonny West, telling him to take care of it. Red and Sonny were in a bind. They didn't want to follow through with the threat, but had to humor Elvis. Red even talked to a hitman, who said he would do it for $10,000. When Red told Elvis, he said, "Maybe it's a bit heavy, let's leave it for now." The tension continued for days. Red and the others tried to calm Elvis down, but he remained angry. They decided to call Dr. Elias Gainham, a trusted physician, who gave Elvis a sedative. The rage slowly subsided, but the situation with Mike Stone remained volatile. Elvis's bodyguards, Red West, Sonny West, and Lamar Fike, decided to ask Kang Rhee, Elvis's karate instructor, to talk to him about his pill use. They knew Elvis respected Kang and might listen to him. The next morning, Elvis came down to receive his 6th degree, black belt in karate. Kang told him, "You are the tiger, and if you want to be the king of the jungle, you have to take care of yourself without depending on pills." Elvis took the advice without getting angry, and the tension eased a bit. A few weeks later, Elvis planned to attend a karate tournament in San Francisco. He organized the trip like a grand adventure, chartering a plane and booking limousines and hotel rooms. On the way to the hotel, Jerry Schilling noticed that Elvis's name was on the marquee in big letters. Elvis was furious and ordered everyone to get his name taken down. The local promoters had put it there without his permission, violating his contract. Ed Parker, one of the organizers, took the letters down, but Elvis was still angry. He decided to leave, and the group headed back to the airport. The trip was a disaster, and it was a long time before they saw Ed Parker again. In April, Elvis went on a short West Coast tour, performing in Phoenix, Anaheim, Fresno, San Diego, Portland, Seattle, and Denver. He was overweight and looked tired. On May 5th, he returned to Lake Tahoe, where he was supposed to perform for several weeks. However, on May 16th, he canceled all remaining shows, citing throat congestion and pneumonia. The real issue was his drug use, which had escalated. His lawyer, Ed Hookstrutton, hired private detectives to investigate the sources of the drugs. They found that doctors were prescribing various drugs directly to Elvis and to his employees, who then passed them along. The information was given to drug authorities, but no immediate action was taken. May also brought legal problems. Priscilla hired a new attorney, Arthur Toll, who filed a petition in Los Angeles Superior Court, claiming that Elvis had failed to disclose his full assets during the divorce settlement. She wanted more money, listing monthly expenses for herself and Lisa Marie, including $400 for the telephone, $2,500 for clothing, and $1,000 for food. She said Elvis's monthly income was over $200,000. The negotiations dragged on for months, causing strain in their relationship. In the end, Priscilla received $4,200 a month in alimony for a year, $4,000 a month for Lisa Marie's support, half the proceeds from the sale of their Los Angeles home, and 5% of the stock in Elvis's song publishing companies. She also got $750,000 in cash and $720,000 to settle any further claims. Elvis paid her legal bill of $75,000. One of Priscilla's reasons for wanting more money was that she planned to open a boutique in Beverly Hills with her friend, designer Olivia Biss. The shop, called Biss & Beau, would cater to young, rich Beverly Hills. Priscilla believed it was important to dress well to convince others to do the same. The new settlement included joint legal custody of Lisa Marie, and Priscilla agreed that Lisa could visit her father whenever it was convenient, especially during the Christmas holidays. Despite the legal battles, the public image remained friendly, but the strain was evident. Elvis nodded, watching Priscilla talk. He remembered how she had grown from an innocent teenager into a mature woman. She had moved in with him when she was young, and he had helped her in his own way. He gave her an unlimited checking account, credit cards, and paid for her karate lessons with Mike Stone. He also paid for her to attend finishing and modeling school. Over the years, the Army sergeant's daughter had transformed into a polished and graceful woman, but Elvis had his own issues. He had a house full of loud, grab-assing bodyguards, a head full of pills, and a record of being unfaithful. Despite everything, he still loved Priscilla, even if not as a husband and lover, but as a respected friend. He hoped she would return his love. After their separation and divorce, he continued to give her cars, fur coats, and expensive jewelry. Whenever Priscilla visited Graceland, Elvis would shave, dress nicely, and put on lots of cologne. Elvis had gone through a lot of changes too. He had faced bitterness, rejection, and rage, but he found a way to move forward. He got down on his knees and prayed to God, writing something he called the Promise. In it, he asked God to help him not do anything to hurt Priscilla, Mike, or Lisa Marie. Elvis felt he hadn't lost anything in the renegotiated settlement. Instead, he believed he had gained. Money meant little to him, but Lisa Marie meant everything. The legal threat of not seeing her was removed, which allowed Elvis to relax around Priscilla and be a supportive friend. When her new boutique was about to open, Elvis called Frank Lieberman, a friend he had made a couple of years earlier, who was now the publicity director for the Tropicana in Las Vegas. He called me, Frank remembered, and he wanted me to help however I could. He knew I knew people in the media. I helped with who to invite to the opening, wrote some of her press releases. Elvis asked if she ever needed help. Would I help? I said yes. In June, Elvis went on a 2-week tour of the South and East. He had 5 shows in Atlanta, 4 in Uniondale, New York, and others in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, St. Louis, Mobile, Nashville, and Oklahoma City, 16 performances in 13 days. The Presley tour machine was well oiled by now. The Colonel's system worked like this. The first wave was led by the Colonel and his staff, who arrived the night before the concert to handle last-minute details. They checked the hotel for security, made sure Elvis's room was quiet and spacious, and secured the floor so no one could get in except his team. They blacked out the windows with aluminum foil and made sure the air conditioning was cold. The second wave was Elvis himself, who arrived right after the concert. He would get into a waiting limousine and be taken directly to the hotel. This way, he could avoid being seen by fans when he was tired and didn't look his best. The third wave arrived the next morning by chartered jet. The plane was huge, and they took out the seats in the first-class cabin to use it for cargo. The rest of the plane was for the band, singers, roadies, sound guys, and light crew. When they checked out of a hotel, they just put their luggage outside their room, and the handlers took care of it. They would walk off the plane and get on the bus again, and the process would start all over. After the tour, Elvis went back to Memphis. On July 21st, he was supposed to start a week of recording. It had been 16 months since he had been in a studio, and RCA was eager for new material. Everyone hoped this session would be as successful as the one in 1969 at American Studios, where Elvis recorded 36 songs in 6 days, including Suspicious Minds. This time, the sessions were at Stax, a studio known for producing hits by top R&B artists like Otis Redding, Booker T and the MG, and Sam and Dave. Felton Jarvis, Elvis's producer, brought in some of the same musicians from the American sessions, like Tommy Cogbill, Reggie Young, and Bobby Wood. Marty Lacker, who had helped set up the sessions with Chips Moman, was now working at Stax. Elvis arrived 5 hours late, wearing a long black cape over a white suit and a Superfly hat. "I thought I'd dress for the part," he joked, but the session didn't go well. The studio was crowded with singers, musicians, and hangers-on, and Elvis didn't seem excited about recording. He didn't prepare his material beforehand, and heard the songs for the first time when he entered the studio. The first night, there were 2 drummers, Jerry Kerrigan and Al Jackson. Elvis finally chose a song called 3 Corn Patches, but it was so corny that Al Jackson refused to play it. Jerry had to do it instead. The next night, Felton Jarvis told the musicians not to yawn because it brought Elvis down. Tommy Cogbill was told not to lie down on the floor while playing bass. On the first day, Elvis recorded 3 songs. On the second day, he recorded another 3. On the third day, he only recorded 2. The fourth day, he recorded 3 more, but he never showed up on the 5th and 6th days. The musicians waited, but finally they were told that Elvis was sick and went home. Despite the difficulties, the material produced during the sessions included several songs that became hits or were critically successful. One of these was "I've Got a Thing About You Baby," which Elvis recorded using the same musicians and arrangement as the original by Billy Lee Riley. It became a hit the following winter. Elvis's declining health and increasing dependence on drugs didn't seem to affect his career. He remained at the top of his field, using his willpower and momentum to continue his string of record hits and tour the country every year. Other top acts like the Rolling Stones and Bob Dylan toured much less frequently. The Colonel continued to make fantastic deals. He surprised the music industry by selling all rights to Elvis's recorded material through 1972 to RCA. This included more than 350 songs and nearly 50 albums. Some people thought the Colonel did it out of greed, but others believed he needed the money to pay his gambling debts at the Hilton Hotel. As Elvis's contract at the Hilton neared its end, the Colonel was being wooed by other hotels. Henry Lewin, who had negotiated Elvis's contracts at the Hilton, knew that the Aladdin and the MGM Grand were interested. Lewin asked the Colonel if he would stay with the Hilton after the MGM Grand opened. The Colonel said he would give Lewin a chance to make a deal, but if it didn't work out, he might go elsewhere. Despite this, the Colonel never signed an exclusive deal with the Hilton, but he verbally promised not to play at other hotels. In late July, the Colonel and Lewin agreed that Elvis would continue to perform at the Hilton twice a year for the next 2 years. He would earn $150,000 a week, more than any other performer in Las Vegas. The hotel also covered his room and incidentals, which could add up to $25,000. Elvis was a huge draw, bringing in crowds of 100,000 people a month. Bruce Bank, the Hilton's publicity executive, said it was like bringing in a major convention. Everyone benefited. However, not everyone was impressed. The Hollywood Reporter criticized Elvis, saying he was uninterested and out of shape. They called it a tragedy to see him in such a state. Despite the negative reviews, Elvis continued his tour, traveling to Memphis, Los Angeles, and Palm Springs. He bought cars, jewelry, and ammo, and stayed up late watching TV. His girlfriend, Linda, made him popcorn balls and fed them to him. He even tried practicing karate, but with a broken wrist, it was more of a struggle than a practice. In October, Elvis and Priscilla finalized their divorce in a private court session. They emerged arm in arm, kissed for the cameras, and then parted ways. 6 days later, Elvis checked into Baptist Memorial Hospital in Memphis. The official reason was recurring pneumonia, but the truth was more complicated. Elvis was struggling with drug addiction and had been receiving daily injections of Demerol. He stayed in the hospital for 18 days, detoxing with the help of methadone. Elvis's hospital stay was unlike any other. The hospital staff made his room as comfortable as possible, even putting tinfoil on the windows to block out the sunlight. Linda Thompson moved in with him, and they were treated like patients. Fans sent thousands of get-well cards and flowers, and the hospital had to set up special security to manage the attention. Dr. Nick visited daily to monitor Elvis's medication. Elvis was released from the hospital on November 1st and spent the rest of the year in Memphis. He watched TV and recorded at the Stax studio in December. The session was more productive than the one in July, but the songs reflected his emotional state. Help Me and Take Good Care of Her were particularly poignant, and Good Time Charlie's Got the Blues was a sad and prophetic ballad. Christmas Eve was quiet, with 3 stockings hung on the staircase, one for Lisa Marie and one for Linda. New Year's Eve was even quieter, with a small party at Graceland. Elvis and Linda made a brief appearance, then retreated upstairs. The partygoers were left feeling deflated. In January 1974, RCA released Elvis: A Legendary Performer Volume 1, a well-researched album that included some of Elvis's most iconic songs and previously unreleased tracks. The album came with a book of historic photos and clippings, making it a hit with collectors. Reviewers praised Elvis, calling him a true American artist with a magnetic appeal. Grail Marcus wrote that Elvis's music touched on the contradictions of the American soul, from a love of roots to a desire for novelty, and from a sense of self-worth to a humble piety. Despite the negative reviews and personal struggles, Elvis's image remained strong. The momentum of his career continued, even as he faced challenges and changes in his personal life. The critics were raving about Elvis's new album, Legendary Performer. Ed Ward, from Phonograph magazine, said it was like discovering Elvis all over again. City magazine in San Francisco thought it was one of the best Elvis reissues ever. The Los Angeles Free Press pointed out that RCA finally recognized that Elvis's fans were more than just buyers. They were collectors interested in his music and legacy. Grail Marcus even believed the album did justice to Elvis's talent and vision. By mid-January, Elvis was preparing for his next Las Vegas show with less worry this time. He would only do 1 show a night during the week, 2 on Fridays and Saturdays, for just 2 weeks instead of the usual 4. This meant he was cutting his shows from 55 or 60 down to about half that number, but his pay remained the same. In the days leading up to his departure, Elvis spent time with his friends. He was still practicing karate and dieting, which meant taking more amphetamines than usual. He was losing weight, and new costumes were being designed for him. One of the significant changes was that he would perform without his iconic cape for the first time in years. Elvis also had a new group of singers on his payroll. These were 3 young men he had hired the previous summer: Donnie Sumner, Cheryl Nielsen, and Tim Beatty. Donnie was J.D. Sumner's stepson and a talented songwriter. Cheryl was a former member of the Statesmen and the Imperials, known for his powerful voice. Tim was a bass player who could sing and was also into karate. Tony Brown, the pianist for the trio, later replaced Glenn D. Hardin in the backup band. He recalled how Elvis treated each of them. Donnie was treated with special care, and Elvis even offered to buy him a house outside Chicago. Cheryl got a lot of solos and featured performances, while Tim was the more eccentric of the group, with a unique style and a deep interest in karate and other hobbies. Elvis paid the group $10,000 a month, plus all expenses. They flew first class, had a master charge card, and were given a $34,000 camper. They were always on call, and whenever Elvis needed them, they would drop everything to be with him. This sometimes led to conflicts with others in Elvis's entourage, who thought the group was taking advantage of him. But it was Elvis's idea, and he wanted them around. In February 1974, there was a shocking incident in Las Vegas. Elvis fired his .22 caliber Savage at a light switch in his hotel suite, and the bullet went through the wall, narrowly missing his girlfriend, Linda Thompson. When she panicked, Elvis just grinned and told her not to get excited. Another time, he started shooting at a chandelier, and when his bodyguards froze, he laughed and said they were in the penthouse, so no one would get hurt as long as he shot straight up. After Las Vegas, Elvis took his 50-person entourage on a tour that lasted 22 days and covered 14 southern cities. He performed 25 shows, including 2 in Houston's Astrodome, where he did matinee and evening performances for the annual Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. The setup was unique, with the orchestra and backup band waiting on a portable bandstand, and in the middle of the AstroTurf field, while Elvis arrived in a Jeep that circled the field before his performance. In Monroe, Louisiana, the mayor and governor attended his shows, and fans nearly tore the motel apart. In Auburn, when Elvis tossed a scarf to a woman in the front row, she ran across the Coliseum, screaming with joy. In Montgomery, Alabama, Governor George Wallace declared Elvis Presley Week and attended the show with his wife. All shows on the tour were sold out, grossing at least $100,000 each, with some bringing in 4 times that amount. In 2 road tours, Elvis grossed more than $1,500,000, compared to the $400,000 he made for 2 1974 engagements at the Hilton. Touring seemed to be the way to go, even with his high expenses. In May, Elvis was back on the road, performing in California, and then heading to Lake Tahoe for 2 shows a day for 11 days. The High Sierra Theater in the Sahara Tahoe changed the format to Elvis in Concert, eliminating dinner and giving Elvis a larger share of the box office. Tickets were $17, including 2 drinks, taxes, and gratuities. This allowed the theater to seat more people. One night, a land developer named Edward L. Ashley filed a $6 million lawsuit against Elvis, the Sahara Tahoe, and Del Webb International Hotels. Ashley claimed he paid $60 to be admitted to a party in Elvis's suite after a show. When he couldn't get anyone to answer the door, he turned off the lights in the hallway. Red West, David Stanley, and Dick Grob, along with others, confronted him. According to Ashley, they beat him up, and Elvis was present but did not stop the beating. Despite the lawsuit, Elvis continued to perform. However, the critics were not always kind. One wrote that Elvis was plump and sluggish at a concert in the Long Beach Forum. Another headline in the San Francisco Sunday Examiner and Chronicle said, "The pelvis slows down in a show of hokum and inui." Elvis went back to Memphis for 2 weeks before embarking on a 16-city tour that covered Texas, the Deep South, Midwest, and East, ending in Salt Lake City, Utah. The Colonel handled the logistics and created the carnival-like atmosphere that Elvis always performed in. Fans came in droves, driving in luxury cars and camper vans, dressed to the nines. The smell in the auditorium was of perfume, hairspray, and aftershave, not marijuana like at other rock concerts. Some paid as much as $150 for front row seats, while others paid $9 for Elvis opera glasses to see him from the back. The money kept rolling in, and Elvis kept spending. One of his big expenses in the summer of 1974 was the production of his own film. He had watched many karate films and thought he could make his own. He called in Rick Husky, a successful TV writer and producer, to help. Rick suggested that Elvis could be a fantastic dramatic actor, but Elvis wanted to do an action film. Rick wrote a 30-page treatment where Elvis played a retired CIA agent seeking revenge for his friend's murder. Elvis was excited about the project, and it would become a significant investment for him. Meanwhile, Elvis continued to buy extravagant gifts for his friends, like when he reopened at the Las Vegas Hilton for 2 more weeks in August. His life was a mix of high-energy performances, intense personal projects, and generous spending, all while navigating the challenges of fame and the expectations of his fans. As the 1974 tour rolled on, it became clear that Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, was facing some tough times. His performances were hit and miss, and his health was visibly declining. In September, when Elvis arrived at the University of Maryland, his band members hardly recognized him. He was heavier, and his movements were sluggish. The show was a struggle, and the audience could tell something was wrong. Elvis's voice was barely audible, and he seemed to be under the influence of drugs. The tour pressed on, but the energy and the spirit that once defined his shows were fading. Elvis's personal life was just as troubled. His father, Vernon, and his stepmother, Dee, separated, and Dee blamed Vernon for treating her like a child, keeping her in a cage. This echoed the feelings of Elvis's ex-wife, Priscilla, who had also felt suffocated by the life they shared. Elvis's relationship with Linda Thompson was also tumultuous, and she eventually moved out of Graceland. To fill the void, Elvis quickly moved on to a new girlfriend, Sheila Ryan, a Memphis beauty queen. On top of his personal struggles, Elvis's professional life was taking a toll. His longtime piano player, David Briggs, left the band to return to Nashville, where he could earn more money. Without Briggs, the band's sound changed, and Elvis's performances suffered. His weight gain and drug use made it difficult for his costume designer, Bill Ballou, to fit him for his stage outfits. The band watched in concern as Elvis's health declined, and some shows were even canceled due to his condition. The financial pressures were mounting as well. Elvis's earnings in 1974 were impressive, over $7 million, but his expenses were staggering. The Colonel took a significant cut, and the costs of maintaining his lifestyle, including his entourage, wardrobe, and travel, were astronomical. Legal fees from a paternity suit and a lawsuit involving an assault in Lake Tahoe drained his resources. Despite his immense wealth, Elvis's financial situation was becoming increasingly precarious. After the tour, Elvis returned to Memphis and took a break from performing for 5 months. This downtime allowed him to reflect on his life and career, but it didn't solve his deeper issues. His health, relationships, and finances were all in a state of flux, and the once unstoppable king of rock and roll was struggling to find his footing. As Elvis approached his 40th birthday, the challenges he faced were not just professional, but deeply personal. The man who had brought joy to millions with his music and performances was now grappling with the complexities of fame, the demands of his lifestyle, and the weight of his own expectations. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Elvis Presley's journey was far from over.